Hey, what's up, guys? Just want to go over a couple things. In Acts 17, I just was reading. I just want to go over a couple things I read. There's an interesting verse about graven images in verses 29 and 30. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by art in man's device. As the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. Because he hath appointed a day in the which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained. Wherefore he hath given assurance unto all men, and that he hath raised him from the dead. Okay, but, I just want to just emphasize the point where, do not think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by art in man's device. So that's your crosses, and your crucifixes, your Mary statues, your Jesus statues, your gold and silver, wood and stone, the works of men's hand. And the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. So maybe he winked at this in times past, but guys, now is the time that God, wants us all to worship in spirit and truth. For the time is at hand. I think that's in Matthew somewhere. But God's not gonna is not gonna wink at this on the great and terrible day of the Lord if you're still worshiping these graven images. It's not going to be winked at. So repent for that. Don't do that. And just another little thing in Acts 19. Verses 26 and 27, it tells you how, and he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, whom when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him unto them and expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. And when he was disposed to pass into Achaia, the brethren wrote, exhorting the disciples to receive him, whom, when he was come, helped them much with had believed through grace. Okay, so that was a little wordy, but it tells you how the brethren is gonna expound unto him the way of God more perfectly. So all the brothers and sisters are gonna correct everyone in the ways of God. So if you come into the group at Straitisthegate and you probably have a good heart and you have ears to hear. But if you start speaking presumptuously and are in a little bit of error, your brother is going to strengthen you. They're going to expound unto you. So we're doing the same things as in Acts. And then they tell you about, and they end this with and help them much which had believed through grace. Through conviction was this man's belief given. So this is a good, people in the Christian church think grace is unmerited favor, but it's conviction, and here it also confirms that because it tells them that, how it helped them that believe through grace. They believe through the grace, the conviction of God. That's how he got his faith. And then just one more thing in Acts I was kind of reading. They tell you, they also just kind of warn you in Acts 20, verse 29 and 30 that, for I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after them. Therefore watch. So it goes to tell you that, they warned you that after I leave, grievous wolves are going to come in. And then you talk to these Catholics that are so proud of the church fathers and this and that. And they're like, guys, the church fell away almost immediately. When Moses went up to the mountain, they created the golden calf and fell away immediately. Paul's telling you here, when I leave, these grievous wolves are going to come in, not sparing the flock. and that even your own people are going to arise and then speak perverse things, drawing away disciples unto themselves. And that's what all these pastors do in the Christian church. They want to draw people to themselves, to their own church, so they can make merchandise out of you. And it's disgusting. So they warn you about this. So these Catholics that, like, you know, yeah, your church fathers went apostate like almost immediately. They warned you about that. And then I just read a couple things in Philippians I just want to go over. Verse 9 I wrote, wherefore God also hath highly exalted him and had given him a name which is above every name. So, the Messiah is not God wrapped up in the flesh. Because in this verse, people will probably take some of these things and, when it says, who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, they'll take that verse and go, oh, the Messiah is God. But, in the same chapter, it says, wherefore God also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name. Okay? And it goes on to tell you that, wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. That's not a once saved, always saved message. Just a couple more. In Philippians 3, it goes on and tells you how that, Paul's talking about concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching the righteousness which is in the law, blameless, the sacrificial law. And it goes on, and be found in him, not having mine own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. And the righteousness which is of God by faith is keeping the Ten Commandments. 2 Peter 1, the first verse is you obtain your faith, the precious faith through the righteousness of God. Keeping his commandments. Not sacrificing animals, and keeping the sacrificial law, the law of sin and death. That's what in the Christian church they'll read this and go, oh, your righteousness doesn't come by keeping the Ten Commandments. It comes by believing that God exists. And that's not what it's saying. Believing means to obey, means to believe, means to do the works that he did, to walk in the light. Okay? So your righteousness isn't from your sacrifices. The sacrifices now is the fruit of your lips, the communication that's well-pleasing to God. So that's not your, it's just a abused verse. And then one more verse. They warn you about false pastors. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross of the Messiah, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. So they're warning you about these false pastors again. They told you about how grievous wolves are going to come in. Here he's telling you that there's, there's going to be enemies of the Messiah coming in, pretending to be the flock, pretending to be the shepherd. And God is their belly. They go to their own vain imagination. Like, remember in Jeremiah 23, what's the marking of the false prophet? They're going to be light by their lightness. You're going to be deceived. They're going to speak vain words of their own imagination, and they're going to tell you no evil shall come upon you. Their God is their belly. So this is a couple chapters I went over today. But guys, go to straitisthegate.net, study to show thyself approved. Time is short. You never know, when that great and terrible day of the Lord's going to come. And you need to be watching. If you're not watching, it's going to come upon you like a thief in the night. Keep the Ten Commandments. Teach others to do so. Rebuke their sin so you don't have blood on your hands. And love your neighbor as yourself.